Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the You Don't Look Like an Engineer podcast. In today's episode,
We are having another one where we bring some of our fabulous guests who are amazing engineers, and today we have Australia's 2022 Young Engineer of the Year.
yes, she uses robotics and electrical engineering to improve people's lives. And through her work, she helps help people of all ages to see the altruistic applications of STEM.
If we were going to get into all her accolades and everything, it would literally be a whole episode in and of itself. She is so incredible. So without any further ado, we'll just jump straight into it.
Yes, Deanna, please tell us who you are, what you do, and why it's important to society.
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. That's many questions, but in a way it makes it easier. High level, I'm an engineer. I write code for robots. At the moment, robots for medical devices, but I've worked on all sorts of technology that helps society in different ways, and I jump between different applications like educational robotics or electronics for developing countries, just to try my hand at all different approaches to help society in different ways with technology. That's
Wow. I guess that sort of like answers this third question that I asked, that why is it so important to society?
It's what and why, yeah.
To be honest, like my mission in that, like for being Young Engineer of the Year, for example, I think that is important to society, not because of the work that I do as an engineer, but because of the work that I do to tell people that these sorts of careers are possible as an engineer. So I have always had kind of a side career in parallel of trying to tell people about the work that I do. And that's why I, in part, work on projects that I find particularly interesting and inspiring, is because that's the work that I want to do, but also because I find that is what inspires other people to reconsider engineering if they'd previously thought, oh, but I want to help people. I speak to a lot of school students trying to change that mindset. Last year I spoke to 1,500 school students, just saying like these things are possible with engineering, which like I said, is like the side career to actually being an engineer.
What event, if any, in your life actually inspired you to embark on this journey of spreading awareness, of what engineering can actually do?
I can trace a particular moment in my career or like in my studies where I nearly changed my degree. Actually, I nearly bailed. I didn't nearly change out of engineering in general. I got into electrical engineering because personally I really like maths, and electrical engineering has a lot of maths, and I was very happy with what I was doing in my degree. But as I got older, I saw that medical engineering students had kind of cooler or more inspiring applications for what they were learning at uni. And so I was getting a bit like jealous of my friend who was doing medical engineering and nearly switched to medical engineering, even though I was very happy as an electrical engineer, technically speaking. And when I didn't do that, luckily, I ended up working on a project that was a brain-controlled car, simulated car experience. So like you would physically get into a car that was in a room of projectors, and it's used for road safety research. And I configured that to work with brain signals as like an engineering project. An engineering project as an electrical engineer that involved all of the things that I enjoy about like electronics, but it was for a cool application, which is why I chose it, of like, oh, okay, road safety research, that's very interesting. But reading about like other uses of brain-computer interfaces, one of the biggest like impacts for society is for people with paralysis, who it's called locked-in syndrome, that like I can't imagine, or like we can't imagine what it's like to be able to think but not communicate that. Like, and so this technology of brain-computer interfaces can let people communicate again who have locked-in syndrome by like interacting with a keyboard or some sort of speech application on the computer that underneath is relying in part on the same brain computer interface that I was designing for the car simulator. So those similar concepts I realized in that moment is like, if I just do the things that I enjoy, technically speaking, they can then be applied to help people depending on the application. And I didn't need to change to medical engineering to have the impact on society. I could stay as an electrical engineer and just choose how, more carefully, I guess, if you're fussy about that, more carefully how I applied my skill, what projects I worked on. So another example, or maybe more succinctly, my friend doing medical engineering, she was working on circuits that were heart rate monitors, whereas in electrical engineering, my circuits were circuits and they had no reason tied to them. And that's why I think that medical engineering can attract a lot of women to study that field, but then it's because it's tied so closely to applications that help people. And the electrical engineer can help as many people in those same projects. I've gone on to work with a lot of medical engineers, but you're doing it from the electronics side with that specialty in mind. But you end up working on the same project. You can help people with any of the engineering disciplines. It's just not as...
Because like you were saying, you don't need everyone of the same thing in a team. You need people from different backgrounds and disciplines. Yeah.
Yeah, so since then, I have ended up working on medical devices with people who have specialized in biomedical engineering, but I chose to specialize in robotics, and robotics for whatever reason, and it's a harder sell, because you just have to trust that later on you'll find a cool reason, or one that speaks to you personally. But yeah, my role was to do the robotics, and somebody needs to be specialized in that, just like somebody needs to be specialized in cell biology, and somebody needs to be specialized in the interface between the two. But all I needed to know was how to make the robot do the things that the surgeon needed so that we could treat patients.
I love the example that you gave us before, because it got me thinking, what is a person without communication? What is a person without the ability to connect to others? That's our, I guess, difference, as a human being from animals and from other species. So it's incredible that you have been able to sort of apply it in medicine and helping to others. It's impressive.
And that's I see so much technology. Absolutely, technology is used to save lives, but most of the devices that I've worked on are used to improve the quality of life of people. And so somebody with paralysis, my technology hasn't directly helped that person, but for somebody who has created that communication application and is genuinely used by people with paralysis, that is a quality of life game changer. And so the context that I was working in, when I won Australian of a Young Engineer of the Year, I was working with former Australian of the Year burn surgeon Professor Fiona Wood, who invented spray-on skin. She came to the bioprinting company that I was working with as a roboticist to improve spray-on skin in order to save lives of people who have suffered from widespread burns from bushfires, for example, but also to improve the quality of life of people who survive. Because our goal with that device is that you don't recover from a burn with scar tissue like you do with current approaches, but you recover functional, healthy skin. And what that looks like and the impact of someone's life is that if you can sweat again, you don't have to stay in an air-conditioned room for the rest of your life. You'll be if your skin has the mobility now, you maybe can hug your family that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And we really admire doctors for the work that they do in saving lives and improving people's lives. And we forget that sometimes it's technology that makes these things possible, and more this technology is created by engineers like me.
It really leaves you lost for words. Have you been able to see some of the patients firsthand, like receive some of the things you've developed, like the spray on skin?
Yeah, this is an early enough device that it's quite, so no is the answer, succinctly, because it's early enough stage that it hasn't gone to trials, which it's a pretty interesting field to work in. And this is why I love that, like, engineering of all types, but robotics as my example, like, I can switch between these industries and learn about the peculiarities of all of these different industries. So medical devices and getting clinical trials approved for something that can treat burns, for example. Well, I find it fascinating to learn that you can't sign people up ahead of time for a clinical trial of a burns device because you don't know when people are going to get. Yeah, and so how do you achieve that? Like, how do you get around that? And it turns out that you do your clinical trial on similar wounds that are pre-planned surgeries that you can, like, yes, sign people up for. So perhaps people who have had skin cancers removed, that sort of treatment, and you kind of you test on a similar but easier problem, logistically speaking. And these things, like, because I'm curious about everything, I imagine that you can relate. And so for me to, like, I don't spend my day doing just robotics. I spend my day listening to the challenges of surgeons and medical devices and whoever else is around me, and just being, like, I don't know, soaking it all in.
I love that
There's
you
a lot to
can
learn.
sense and hear the curiosity and
Yes,
excitement you have.
it's contagious.
Well, and that's why, like, why do I tell people about engineering? Or, like, why am I an engineering ambassador? And it's because I enjoy my job so much. And I nearly switched from electrical engineering to medical engineering, which would have been kind of not the ideal subdiscipline of engineering for me, and that would be a shame. But I also could have never been an engineer at all, and that would have been a huge shame because I love what I do. And so the the I don't know, like, terror of, like, the FOMO that strikes my heart when I think of how close I came to not being an engineer is what motivates me to just go and tell everyone, like, did you know that I'm happy as an engineer? And maybe you'd be happy as an engineer too, maybe not. But you should consider it, because I had never heard of engineering when I finished high school. And it's different now, but I'm lucky that I, like, stumbled into it.
Wow, this is so inspiring. I guess, like, our curiosity, was there anything in your childhood that made you the person that you are today, or was, like, anything that caught your attention and the STEM interest grew?
Yeah. Um, I I've just always been a mega nerd. Like, I didn't know about engineering, but I loved maths. I've always loved, it's not a common thing, which is part of why, like, I like I loved my time at university because it was so normal to enjoy maths. Like, when you're in I did a maths degree as well as an engineering degree, and you're so normal when you sit in a room of people doing a maths degree in that, like, one dimension of life. And I, the older I get, like, the more I realize, like, that's not a common thing. But when I was a child, like, you only know what you know. You only know kind of your interests. You don't realize, you don't have a big enough view of the world to realize if your interests are, like, unique or special. At some point, you might catch on that they're, like, weird, but I usually, like, I feel like there's a middle area of when you like kind of like something. I think that's the like risky zone of like maybe you'll society will convince you that it's not worth liking that thing. Whereas when you're so I don't know, extremely interested in something, there was nothing that could stop me. So like I this this is this is like the weirdest anecdote of my I guess older childhood is that I was in year 8 and I was 12 years old, which is normal in Queensland. And maybe I was like the youngest of the year because my birthday's at the end of the year, but I was not challenged enough in like the maths classes that I was doing, partly because I lived overseas before, and I changed into a class that I changed schools in order to be in a class that was year 8, 9, and 10. My parents changed schools for me, bless them. and I was doing year 10 work, but I was still like supposed to be in year 8. And at the end, I pushed the school that I would go into year 11 after that. And I kind of never was in year 9 because I skipped from year 8 to year 11. And I, at 13, was doing like senior subjects with my friends who were like the normal age. So that to me was like, you don't fall into that situation if you could sort of like that. I got into that situation because I was like, no, I need to learn like harder things. I love maths. I wanted to do like more difficult things, or just like any of the subjects, like the physics class. I loved the physics class. And I was in physics at 13 and I finished high school. I turned 15 on the night of our school formal, which is like, you don't end up there by accident. You end up there because you're like determined to learn. And that is, I'm looking back, I'm really grateful that I had extreme determination, because a lot of the students that I speak to are like very capable and smart students, but it's hard to actually like throw yourself into something when you're not sure, and it's hard to be sure when you're a teenager. I'm very lucky that I wanted to be eventually, like I found out about engineering. I'm like, I will do this at all costs, but I was never trying to be like a, a trailblazer or like do something really unique. I was just trying to do the thing that I enjoyed, and it turned out that I chose something that is like not very common for people like me to go into, but I was so like committed by that point.
Oh, I love that you brought
Into
up how you
it.
saw, kids that also like doing it. And I'm not sure if it can be attributed to a difference in learning or difference in environment, but what do you think? Do you actually think there's a difference in how we learn and can learn quickly, or was being quick innate for you?
Oh, I actually know I'm getting like a bit emotional thinking about the answer to that question, because I think that so much of the behavior of people at that age depends on how they're encouraged. And I'm very lucky that my family, particularly my dad, who's very like technically minded, he was like, Deanna, you can do these things. There's no reason you can't do these things. You have potential to be, well, he tells a story that like, I'm not sure I've ever tried to like relay it, but he tells it all the time of like, at some point when I was young enough that I don't remember, he said, Deanna, you have the potential to be like one of the best like scientists or engineers. I don't think he used the word engineer because I never had it, but best scientists in, I don't know, of this day and age. And I said back to him like, I know. like, and like I don't remember that, but I wouldn't not believe it, because when you have someone in your corner that is like, girl, you can do this. Like, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do it. Then that's the feeling that you have, is like, I know. It's only when you go out into the rest of the world and it's like, wait, there are only 3 women in this class of like 100. You didn't mention that. And like, it's fine because I'm already in there with this, like, I know I can be here mindset. But if I were in a different family, I do wonder if I would have ended up with the career that I have, just because I maybe didn't feel as confident to go. Because it's like, I look back at my story was almost like so exceptional that it's like, oh, maybe that's why I never realized that I was doing like this weird thing, or like going against the grain. Like, I was just so determined. But oh, I forget what I was going to say. But just that, like, there's that I don't know. No, I can't remember what I was going to say. But I think part of why I lost my train of thought is because I was also remembering that, like, so my dad was there being like, you can do this, fact, like, forget what anyone else says. But also my mum, when I was younger, she was seeing like, hey, there are, I don't know, she must have realized that there are, my dad was kind of like, don't worry about who you are, you can do it. But maybe my mum was seeing more like the reality of the situation of like, okay, but girls don't seem to do those things very much. And so, like, well, what about like the implementation details? And so when I was maybe like 10 years old, I can remember going to a robotics camp for girls, and who knows what impact that had on my mindset of just being like, of course girls can do these things. Whereas you hear stories of, people, I don't know, I heard an anecdote of like a girl, a small child, I don't remember, maybe like 5, saying like, oh, women can't work at Bunnings, for example, like women can't work at hardware stores. And they draw these conclusions, not because that's a rule, but because they see women are not working at a hardware store, this sort of thing. Like, you just like internalize these ideas of what you can or can't do, or should or shouldn't do, and that can really turn you away from things. But when you also, like, there's also, so we're just picking these things up from our environment, which means we have the opposite. Like, we can use that to our advantage, and like, okay, well, what about if we just send out these subtle signals from the environment that you can do these things? Like, it is a very normal thing for women, for girls to be doing robotics, because look, there's however many other girls at this robotics camp enjoying the same things as you. Like, that's the power of this, like, subconscious positive reinforcement. That's why, like, I mean, half of the regional winners of Young Engineer of the Year were women, and that is like, it's no surprise to me, because like, I know that women in this field are like doing amazing work, but it would be a surprise for some people who are younger and think like that girl at Bunnings. It's like, oh, I don't see anyone doing these roles, so it just mustn't be possible. And you put these sorts of, I don't know, counter stereotypes, just role models out there, and it's like, oh, that logical reasoning was incorrect. Anyone can do these things.
That encouragement and self belief that was instilled in you in your skills growing up, do you think that is why you're passionate about speaking to kids as well?
Yeah, that's why I was like upset before, was because, like on the verge of being upset, is because it's when you, I mean, that's a privilege that I had, that I was in a family that already cared about these things, and I try to be like, not a replacement, but some sort of, I don't know, proxy for that, for as many people who don't have that at home, or at school. Like, in society, you're receiving the exact opposite message a lot of the time, that you can't or shouldn't. Like, girls stop being interested in maths at the age that they start realize, like, picking up signals from society that's like, oh, this is not cool. You know, there's a trade-off here. Do I want to be like, do I want to be liked, or do I want to do the things that I enjoy?
It's such a big thing, honestly. Like when we were doing research, they were saying girls up until the age of 5, they believe they can become scientists, mathematicians, whatever they want. But by the time they're 6, that completely drops off because they don't say A, any representation, and B, society gives them signals they're not meant for it.
And they're not explicit. Nobody, like, find me a person that
Yeah,
says, who thinks these days, like, girls can't do whatever it is that they want. But yeah, we're talking about like very subtle signaling to fit in, to like survive in society, to be accepted. I should be like the women on TV, and they seem to have like mutually exclusive values of like you're either interested in this or you're smart. Like you the,
smart is like uncool,
exactly,
unpopular,
exactly.
unwanted,
Yeah.
you know.
And there's no one that is just like this normal like I think I'm a pretty normal person, and according to media I shouldn't exist because you can't be both. You can't wear a dress and like be intelligent. You can't have social skills and intellectual abilities. And it's like, what? Have you met any of my friends? This is like all of the women that I know. And so, like when I remember doing like a try engineering workshop at a school, and the cool girl in the class, when I got close to her, she nearly like screamed that in shock of like, you have a nose ring. Like she was just wildly amazed that an engineer could have a nose ring. And it's like, I can't blame her for it because what does she get exposed to except, I don't know, I really feel like there's this message of like it's one or the other. Choose wisely. And the most important thing at school is to fit in, I think. And so the message that I try to give the school students is like, it's okay to be smart. It's okay to want to learn. Like it's actually a good long-term strategy to to do the thing, especially like if you're good at technology, interested and have strengths, and like this is where it's like, okay, if nobody has encouraged you, you might have like potential that you don't even realize yourself because no, I'll stay away from these. So that's anyway, that's a different subject. But if somebody already knows that that's something that they're interested in and they're consciously choosing, I would like that, but I don't want to be like I don't want to go against social norms. I just want them to understand that there are financial implications of that because these careers pay really, really well. So if you're good at them, you can make life easier in the sense that, like, I just show them that I have traveled to nearly 50 countries and that I like live all over the world and I do this almost like because I'm an engineer, because I work in technology. There are definitely other ways to do it, but this is the one that it ticks all the boxes for me. It's not a trade-off that I make of like, um, I I really like this, but I need to make money, so I'll do this. It's like, no, I do. You can do both, and then you can help people at the same time. That's the other place that like people will, I don't know, opt out. It's like I'm really interested in technology, but I want to help people.
But if we go to the trade-off that you were saying that the young kids are afraid of, as in socially, will they suffer if they choose to follow these passions in, say, science, maths, whatever? In your experience, did you experience such a trade-off? As in, do you think you suffered socially at all?
Oh, I feel like so when I was in so before I was in year eight in that story, I had spent 3 years living in the US, and I remember looking back at that time being so, I don't know, grateful, I guess, that the cool kids were the smart kids. And I don't think that's a common thing And if I were in a different school where it was like choose one or the other, I might have felt very differently. But I was so happy in my friend group of smart
Cool.
girls and boys that there was no trade-off to be made. And that, like, I don't know, I can only like empathize with people who don't have that, or maybe, maybe it might not be as clear cut as that, because thinking about it, in that school as well as like the one where I did my high school, there are other groups of people who have different interests. It just is like, maybe it's the reality in every school that like the cool kids are not that bad. Like, sorry, the smart kids. The smart kids are not that bad. It's like, actually, the smart kids are pretty, like, that's a group that I want to be in. And maybe in someone else's mind, there was this mega trade-off happening of like, oh, social suicide or whatever. For me, that was like, no, these are my people.
Would you say you relate to that,
I
Laura?
think I think I can sense that since you have always been encouraged to be yourself, because you have always been in an environment where you were accepted just to be like you were comfortable being yourself, and your parents were always like, yeah, that's the way to go. At least your dad, as you were saying, I think you were so okay with being that you were like, okay, maybe I'm not entirely sure, but from what I'm hearing, because it seems like um as you said, like your support network in such a young age, when you are sort of like discovering who you are, what you like, and getting influenced by society, having a support network that sort of like tells you, no, you can do whatever you want, it's key. So maybe that was probably the reason.
It's definitely a positive feedback cycle of like, I remember I met an engineer. I don't think this is relevant to the story, but it's in my memory that like we met volunteering in Nicaragua repairing medical equipment. That's where I learned Spanish, Laura. And she was, so we had come from very different backgrounds and different universities. And she was really amazed by me that I was confident enough to ask questions in the sessions that we, because I was, like I said, I didn't study medical engineering. I was there to repair medical equipment in hospitals that sort of just sits broken in cupboards. It was fantastic fun for me, like just to pull things apart and like, but I needed to learn what the devices actually were to start off with. Like, I'd never seen any of the equipment before, owing to not ever doing medical things before. And I think she was like really struck by how confident I was in asking questions and being, that's a brave thing to do. That's a risk to take, to be like, hey, I don't understand this. And that's a very brave thing to do. And that's when I first realized that I have that courage because I've already sort of cemented in my mind the confidence. And so that's like a positive cycle for me, because I can learn more and more and more, because I can ask more and more questions. But it can work in the opposite direction if you start at a different point, that it's like, I'm afraid to ask questions because I'm afraid for people to think that I'm not smart, because I don't feel myself confident. And so you just move further and further away from learning things, as opposed to having the like confidence to lean into them. And that's where like, I think that yeah, I see that path. That's we try to with workshops in schools that specifically are like technology workshops for women or for girls at that age. It's to try to stop that cycle from happening, because in order to build confidence in technology, you need to be brave. Like, when these are intimidating things that you're not going to be good at to start with because it's new in society, like this is your first day learning to code, but in your head you're supposed to already be like a top programmer. Well, you're gonna feel like in that negative feedback loop of oh, I don't want to ask a question because I'm supposed to know what I'm doing and I don't, and so that sort of thing. And there's an anecdote from the woman who started Girls Who Code organization, that she noticed that the girls that she would try to help had just like a blank text file there of like, I don't know what to do, can you help me? And that all of the workshop facilitators have realized if you do like Control Z, you'd find this full like attempt that was 90% correct, but rather than be like, this is what I've done, like help me with the last step, the girls would just delete it all and be like, I don't know. So that like that's the cycle that is important for us to break in switching the path from people shying away from technology careers that they could be very well suited for, and like moving the train railroad track like back over to this other path of like, yes, you can do it, you're not supposed to know anything, feel free to ask questions, like that sort of thing. It's very hard to impart on people who have already convinced themselves that they don't belong in a space.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why it's so dangerous that we have teachers or people that are part of our early development as human beings to sort of like put us in the box that we can or we shouldn't or not good enough for it, because it can actually detriment. And as you were saying, like it's confirmation bias at the end of the day, and if you fall into that loop of not feeling that you should, and then things don't go as you would expect them to go, then you sort of like changing the direction from the end objective. But
Yeah, and you're safe. It was like, oh, phew. I dodged the criticism because I never put myself out there, and so you get rewarded for that in your mind of because well, I've cut you off, so there's a chance I'll change the subject now. So what are you what you were about to say?
no, I was just I'm just curious because in everything that we have spoken, confidence seems to be like your best trait. Oh, one of the many. But I was just gonna say, as a woman, did you ever feel like imposter syndrome, especially after all these awards that you have received, or when you started sort of like getting involved in like public speaking or talking to younger audiences about it? Did you ever feel like you weren't supposed to be there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe why part of why I like talking to younger audiences is because like you don't have imposter syndrome because it's like there's no gray area there of like, to them you're very successful because you're an adult. But I think there's maybe other people have realized this as well. But what I have noticed is really important for people on the job who don't just like instinctively have confidence, and maybe it's no one that just instinctively has confidence, but some people are more susceptible to it than others. There's the big thing is like, what are the standards that you're using to evaluate yourself? Because I had an experience where I intentionally joined an like elite software engineering team as an intern, and I didn't have any software like training pretty much, and so like you're gonna have a hard time. It was very difficult, like emotionally, but the reason why you have a hard time is if you're looking at people with 10 more years experience of you than you, and you say that's where I should be, well, you you are going to fail by that sort of standard. And so what can be really helpful in confidence at work is to just like recalibrate actually what is the standard that does apply to you. Because senior engineers can tell interns or grads as much as they want, like, you're not expected to know anything, but they still internally will feel that they don't know they'll recognize they don't know as much as the people around them. And so they're like failures, or there's been some sort of mix up. And as much as we can make it explicit, the better, that it's like, hello, you're an intern, here's your job description, know nothing, like really, like these are the things. And this is what can help is like not just that, but to make it like sink in someone's mind is like, you're the intern, this is your expectation. When you're a graduate, this will be your expectation. You can see it's a little bit more. And then when you're this level of engineer, it will be this expectation. And just like really like talk to someone's subconscious, like convince them that there's this level of expectations that increases of like what they're expected to know and to be able to do well versus just like flap around surviving. You've been pushed into this like deep end, and okay, you should be able to tread water here, whereas here you should be like an Olympic swimmer. I find that helps me at least to feel like, okay, I am not as good as the other engineers that I'm working with, but that's because they have more experience than me. And if I use this standard for the level that I am paid at, I'm doing okay.
It's amazing because it shows the abundance sort of like mindset. Like you focus on what you have, and because when you talked about that, especially today, I feel like it's such a like fresh of what is it? Fresh breath of fresh air to hear something like that. Because I was thinking about like I had a busy day, and probably I'm gonna cut this from the podcast, by the way. I was like venting. I was like, stressful, but we have to give ourselves more credit for where we are. And when we're surrounded by so many people that are probably at the 300 and something day of their professional life, it's so much harder for us to judge ourselves based on that instead of just accepting that we are in probably day 100 or like day 20. And there's such a like long journey that we still have to go through, and also that perhaps like we have done a lot of things as well that we should own. And when you vibe with that energy, knowing like, yeah, I have done my part, I think there's more compassion for yourself, and confidence keeps sort of like brewing inside of you. So good
That's
to
it,
hear.
is it like well, confidence is a relative thing. That's it. It's like you compare yourself to other people, and if you compare yourself to the wrong person, you'll end up with like an unfair evaluation of yourself. And I realized that I was doing that in this like software job that I had in Silicon Valley, not through work, but actually through one of my first sports hobbies, which was rock climbing. And first sports hobby came into my life at like, I don't know, in my 20s, because you mentioned before that I have confidence as like a skill. It's more specific than that. I have like academic confidence in like technical fields. That's where I have confidence. The rest of life, like, I don't know, all bets are off. Like, give me a soccer as a child, like if you would kick me a soccer ball and then I couldn't kick it back, I'd be like, well, I guess I'll just never play soccer. Like I will, my solution to that was to just never do sports ever again, because obviously I'm not meant to do it. And some people take that approach for like STEM fields. And I took that approach for the rest of my life that I wasn't just automatically good at. And so then I got into bouldering, which is like an individual sport. And I remember being so embarrassed not being able to do the entry level climbs. And I kept showing up because I was like, I think this is a skill that I was meant to have learned in childhood, to just not care that I'm bad at things. And I kind of dodged that intentionally. So here I am. I'm not even level 0 and I'm just going to keep trying, even though everyone is watching me, unable to do the thing that I'm able to do. So that was like a huge mental achievement, because I don't have confidence in like that physical, didn't have confidence in that physical domain. And then years afterwards, so I kept doing this like solo bouldering while I was working at this software job in Silicon Valley. And I realized after a while, I had gotten to the level of the people that I used to watch climbing and be like, wow, I'll never get, wow, look at them. They can climb like, it was a number system, like they can climb 4s. Oh my gosh. And eventually I got to 4s, and you don't realize that you're at a 4 because, you know, you're still struggling. You're struggling like you struggled when it was a 0, because that's what growth looks like. You're always looking for, you're going into this like struggle void, I guess. And so you can only realize that you've progressed when you look back and remember how you used to be in awe of those people existing. And when I realized that all I had to do to get there was like show up every day, I was like, oh, my colleagues have just been showing up more days than me. They're like, oh, like they are, yeah, they're level 8 and I'm level 4 or whatever, but they're all older than me. Like, I haven't been doing it for as long. And if I could progress in climbing, just like showing up every day, then probably I could do the same in, you know, writing software. And, well, that's what I kind of stuck to. And now I still catch up with the guys that were on my team. We were writing software called the robot operating system that's used by roboticists worldwide and on the International Space Station. I think NASA will use it for their next lunar rover mission, as well as like, I don't know, Antarctic penguin surveying robot. So it's used everywhere, but I digress. That's just in case someone was wondering, like, what software are we talking about? Did I miss it? No, I didn't mention. And I was chatting to one of those mentors the other day, and I was like, oh, I think I'm you guys now. Like, I'm that expert. And, you know, I won't say it was just time in the meantime, that like, it wasn't just time passing, but it was showing up every day. It, yeah, it makes a big difference.
So many questions, but I want to know about your experience in Silicon Valley, because you mentioned it a couple of times now in our conversation, and I want to know what did you expect when you went there, and how was it, like expectation versus reality, sort of thing?
Yep. Yeah, so there are a few things I can answer that, but I'm just aware that answering that will also be answering like a question of like, what was it like to work at a company of all roboticists, and what was it like to live in the US? Like, there are some like overlap. Like, in statistics, you say like confounding variables, that it's like it's hard to tease them apart. But my experience was that I didn't want to move there originally. And that's why I was doing an internship intentionally, because it was just going to be short term. And then I ended up staying for nearly 3 years. And I stayed there because I was enjoying it. I was really enjoying the work that I was doing and the team that I was on. And I remember at the beginning, I felt like I was in a company that was kind of an exception to all of the other engineering companies, because we had, well, there were 2 women on the robotics team as opposed to just me being the only one. So it was a small team. It was, in the end, I speak about like the proportion of women because the truth is that I noticed that I make friends with women more easily in offices in terms of like friendship, right? So I made friends with other women at the company who even weren't engineers. And when eventually they left to go into other roles because they'd just been there longer than me, I was like, oh, now it's me and another woman as the only engineers in the company out of 20 people, I guess. And it didn't wear on me necessarily that I was the only woman in my team, but I noticed that I had a different personality to the people in my team. And I think that, like, sometimes when I talk about being around more women, like I enjoy being around more women, and part of the reason is because I enjoy being around people with similar personalities to me. So there's I don't know, a lot of people will challenge me on, like, I'm not trying to be controversial to say that I enjoy working with people who have had, like, it comes down as well to having had similar life experiences. Like, I almost feel bad for the guys that they don't get this experience. To go to a women in engineering or women technology event is the best energy that, or like a very specific energy of women supporting each other through like shared experiences that include sometimes adversity. And it's a really nice feeling of like, hey, we can all do it. And you go home and you've got this like newfound, I don't know, motivation. And there were a lot of those events in Silicon Valley. Lots of, like, every event was on in Silicon Valley. That's what I loved about it, is that every night there were like 3 or 4 different technical events that I could choose from. When you have everyone like gathering in one spot like that, yeah, that's cool to just like, anything you can dream of, it's happening there. But eventually that became kind of tiring for me, because most of the people that I interacted with were software engineers, and love them to bits, but it was like, I want more just variety in who I interact with, which you know, the good, that's like the strength and the weakness, I guess, of being in a place that is known for being like the tech hotspot. I'm glad that I went, and I mention it sometimes. Like you said, oh, you've mentioned it a few times. I mention it because it seems to be the easiest way for me to like convince, or like, sometimes we have these like shortcuts that we discover of when you're talking to people. Okay, if I use these words, that's when people's eyes light up. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's not like, so for young people, for example, who don't know anything about what I do and they've never written a line of code, I can still say Silicon Valley and they were like, wow, really? Like, although at a certain age, they're just like, what's that? Which is fair enough. And so I use it sometimes as like as a shortcut for saying like, look how successful I was, even though, you know, it's definitely a
Well, I'm
shortcut.
glad that I made you expand on that, because I definitely wasn't expecting that. But nice.
And you kind of, I have needed to develop these strategies. Like, you don't need to, but we want to talk about our jobs in a way that makes people's eyes light up. And I have just noticed that, like, there are some groups, like roboticists that I work with, when I tell them what I was doing there, they're like, wow, really? You were on that team? Like, that's great. But most people that I talk to, they're like, I'm sure that was really great, but I don't understand. And that's how it felt. Like, all of my university experience, I would come home and try to be like, look at this cool thing that I'm doing. And your parents are just like, I'm sure it's really great, sweetie. And that's why I like working on technology that helps people, because I can tell people about my job and they care about it. Like, they go, like, it sounds like a superficial thing, but we want to feel like we're having an impact. And part of how we feel like we're having an impact is the response that people give when we tell them about our lives. And it's nice when people say, wow, a medical device, that's cool. But for me, like, you know, day to day, I'm really happy doing the robot the robotics for any sort of device, but I can't like convey my excitement to people who don't share the same excitement that I have by just saying, look at this code that I wrote. They'll never be like, that's amazing. I have that's one of the techniques that I employ, is finding these things that you can say that people will appreciate the work that engineers do, because people can't just naturally grasp onto it, because no one knows what engineers do, and we're not good at explaining what we do. And even when we do, people don't share the same interests as us necessarily. Like, that's fine. And I feel this way when people talk about like civil engineering sometimes. It's like, I'm happy for you, but that's not my
You are dealing with
Laura,
that's pretty much what I get told.
well, and I remember actually, Laura, when you told me, like, I saw the drainage challenges in my home at Columbia, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you said I wanted to be a part of that solution, and I knew that civil engineering was a way that I could get into that. Like, well, then I got it. You know, you have to find these like strategies to convey.
And also convince yourself. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. To convey to people why you enjoy what you do. And like, you don't have to, for sure, but I find it important in like job satisfaction that I can.
Because it's about finding your purpose, right? On this train of thought, do your career choices ever get influenced by how that would look to a younger child? Like, will their eyes light up and think this is so interesting?
Yeah. And
Wow.
I mean, it's aligned with, it is aligned with, it's not, it sounds like it's aligned with what I want as well. So it's like, because.
So it's never been that they've been at odds, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of a mute. Yeah, in terms of a Venn diagram of like things that I enjoy working on, things that inspire students. In the middle is also where I like to be, because I like to inspire students. Oh, that wasn't the best example, but anyway, the choices that I make, I didn't intend. They've had an unintended inspirational impact when I have gone back to revisit some of my decisions. So specifically, even working in Silicon Valley, I was at a non-profit open source foundation that, was known to not pay as well as like Google, because, who does? And so that was like, that's a choice that I consciously made. And then after that, I came back to Australia to work on the skin printing robot at a startup. And including the exchange rate to Australian dollars, which is like, but I can do that because I'm Australian, I took like a 40% pay cut between those jobs. And I had already been working at a nonprofit. And then I decided to work 3 days a week, because I got burnt out in Silicon Valley, and I wanted to have this life goal of like sustainability. And so I took another 40% pay cut. And so, but I got my time back. So like, that's fine. And so then I was putting this on a slideshow once for talking to students. And I was like, damn, Deanna, like, are you telling me like just running and even today, like I'm still not 100%, but is that not like, wasn't I earning a third of what I was in the US then? And so that, in terms of the way that most people direct their career, that's just like the total opposite, right? Nobody's gonna do that.
Yeah, especially
if
now. Yeah, you see it more and more.
Yeah. So for me to tell them, I was not doing that to tell them, look, you can take the career less well paid. I wasn't trying to do that. Because that wasn't a sacrifice. Like that was not a sacrifice. I would make that decision absolutely again, because to work part-time at an Australian company like near my family, that was the best decision for me. And the reason it ended up on my slideshow is because the point I was trying to make was like, sometimes the best decision for you looks like a very bad decision to someone else, because in the end, what is relevant that we forget is like, well, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for doing work that you enjoy and that inspires people, and that like you can tell to your parents and they will feel that they don't know what you do, but at least they are wowed by it? Or are you optimizing sometimes, like truly sometimes you do optimize for financial gain, because like, you know, people living costs money, travel costs money, families cost money, all these things cost money. And so, and yeah, and that's where it's like,
What does success look like to you sometimes?
sometimes it's a trade-off. Totally. And so when I can also tell them that like doing that, I still get paid well, and that's the joy at the moment of like, I don't know, at least the discipline of engineering that I'm in, it's like the point I'm trying to make, if they want it, it's there that like, if you enjoy this career and you stop yourself from going into it because you don't think it's cool enough or something, or you don't think it's impactful, like, just be careful of that, because I'm very happy. I don't feel like I make compromises in my life. I've got this like, all the boxes are being ticked. And I'm not trying to make everyone engineer them, but for people who would enjoy it, I'm trying to give them motivation that can help overcome the adversity that they'll get put up against. Like the title of the podcast of like, you don't look like an engineer. I hear that all the time. And there was a time that when I was in university, and I would say, yeah, I'm an engineer. People would be like, wow. And I really enjoyed that feeling for a time. And then there are other times where you're like, yeah, wow, I've never heard, like, it's not nice that people are surprised that by your identity. Like, that doesn't always feel nice, because people are saying like, you're an anomaly, like you're so weird. And I never set out to be a trailblazer. I just like accidentally chose something that was like uncommon. But what was the point I was making? Tell me about wow.
It's all right.
It was going to be really impactful too. I felt like there was some momentum gathering there. Oh yeah, the trade-offs, I guess. Yeah. If you are, so I think the point that I was trying to make about like, look, I've got all of these boxes ticked for me. Well, if the reason you're not going to be an engineer is because you don't like it, I'm very happy for you. But if the reason you're considering not being an engineer is because somebody told you, check the stats on that, like, girls don't go into that. I don't know. I don't think anyone would ever say that. But if it was like just a sense that you got that like, I'm not supposed to be doing that in society.
But they do say that. I mean, you do hear those conversations, especially with the rise of people such as Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, where they say women are more suited for nurturing and they should be in those roles, and they don't belong in the thinking and doing groups. And unfortunately, that sort of conversation is on the rise.
But that conversation is like makes the assumption that these things are mutually exclusive.
Exactly. And that's why your message is so important, you know?
Because if you let those people take you away from this like box ticking dream, I just want people to be conscious of what they're like giving up. Because if you see it as like, oh, it's an easier path for me to stay away from, like, definitely there is a dimension of my life that would be easier if I took a more like traditional path for women to take. But the part of my life that would be harder that I wouldn't get to write, like, I wouldn't get to work with robots every day. Like, that's the part that you have to live with every day, is that, like, the if I get into a role that is, I don't know, like managing people, for example, I don't feel as good. Like, I like to be working with technology. I don't want to make that. That's the area for trade-off that is like, um, that's what it could look like. It's like, oh, okay, I'll do this other thing because I don't like it as much, but it, ticks whatever other boxes. And I'm really lucky that I didn't have to make these trade-offs, because at least how society is at the moment, there'll never be enough engineers for all the great ideas that we've got, technology we're trying to build.
You know how you said that certain aspects of your life probably would have been easier if you didn't choose to embark on this journey or do it specifically this way? Do you think that the travel and the style of working that you chose has impacted your personal life?
Um, I think I'm having a hard time answering the question that you asked, because my mind is like tied up with what I originally meant by that. So I'm going to answer what I originally
Okay,
meant
okay.
to clear my mind.
Definitely.
So the thing about, and I was just speaking about like the effort that it takes me effort to be the odd one out. It like, it drains me to be the odd one out in terms of personality, also in terms of like gendered experiences in life. And that's partly because you need to, before you can talk to people about that, you first have to convince them that you've had that sort of experience. Whereas like when I hang out with women, they just say like, oh yeah, me too. And like that part is, you skip over that. And I had mentioned before we started recording that like when I was in Silicon Valley, I was surrounded by news stories of women having a hard time in technology, and that what can be very hard to explain to people is that, for right or wrong, the reality of your present situation not being good. Okay, like in my team, I was very happy with the guys that I worked with. That's not enough for you to like put out of mind. Okay, but these things have happened to other people. They could be coming for me. Like, even if it's not happening in that moment, you're safe, you're fine, you're happy, you're loving life. But you're always on the lookout, like, okay, when is it gonna, like, which of these meetings is gonna be, or like, I don't know, like after work drinks could turn into me being this news story. It's like that, people certainly have intellectual opinions about whether or not I should feel this way, whether or not I should waste energy on these things. But in the meantime, the reality is that I do, and that I find it sort of exhausting. I remember when I was at university, I moved around a lot, which I guess, coming back to your question, Sohan, I moved around a lot by choice, which meant that I was being always like, so at QUT where I studied, I was just known as like the redhead electrical engineering girl, and like I was known there, and so people didn't ever assume, oh no, people did assume that I was out of, like, the students would come to my class. I was teaching engineers, and they would always say like, is this the engineering maths class? Like, am I in the right place? And they're like, sit down. Yes, this is the right place. Like, and nobody means offense by that, but I would get kind of like, you're just waiting for it to happen again. So when I moved, I also went to university in France, Spain, Scotland, and Switzerland as part of my master's. And in each of those places, I was an unknown person. And you're on kind of alert for somebody to come up to you and say like, hey, are you lost? Like, is this, did you mean to be somewhere else? And there are these like subtleties in the buildings that I studied in, they didn't have women's toilets on all of the floors, for example. And these things, like, I don't know, people, like I said, people will be like, what if you just like don't feel that way? There you go, problem solved. And it's like, okay, but in the meantime, I don't know how to not feel this way, and it costs me energy. So that's what I meant about like, not that I could have maybe saved. I don't remember what I said, but like that I could have saved myself some hassle if I just chose something else. But I found instead, okay, well, I'll do the thing that I want to do, and it comes at the cost of being the odd one out. But I'll make strategy. Like, I've also found the strategies that work for me that I stick to it. And so in Silicon Valley, I mentioned I like explicitly sought out. I'm like, okay, I'm getting a really negative vibe about like women in technology at the moment. I'm afraid to be, I don't know. Anyway, a friend made a podcast called Motherboard Podcast, and that was interviewing mothers in technology. And they had very ordinary stories of like, yeah, so I work at this tech company and I asked, and so they added a nursing room, and now like my return to work has been very straightforward. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how do we get more of these stories like in the news, because they're the ones at the time I needed to hear. And I've gotten kind of attuned to that feeling that I have at times of like, I think I need to be around some like good vibes. and and it's not every day, and not everyone has this feeling. And not everyone has this feeling every day. So it's like I definitely have met a woman engineer. When I was the president of the Women Engineering Society at QUT, they didn't want anything to do with it, and they didn't like that it existed. And so like there are different approaches to these things, and the approach that I have taken is like, okay, I like to, sometimes I need to be around just like artificially pump the training data of like positive stories. So there was a particular time when I was in Sydney, and I went on Google and I was like, please, women in technology event Sydney, like I need you. Where are you? And thankfully, since I was in Sydney, like there were 3 in the next month, and I went to those and I like recharged, and then I took like, because I was advocating for nursing. Oh no, the nursing room in our office someone else had advocated for, which was like, what a joy. But advocating for prayer rooms and different things that I'm like, okay, I need to recharge for more, I don't know, fight's not the right term, but it takes effort. And so recharging has been the straight. You can avoid the effort altogether, or the option is there as well for people who don't want to make that trade-off, that they find a strategy that helps them recharge. Being in that room of, I was in a room of like women engineers who were older than me, and there were like 100 of them, and it was a gala event. They were all dressed really nicely. Our company sponsored me and some like junior engineers to go, and you just feel like you're in this fairy tale for one night of what it could be like, a world where people don't say, oh, you don't look like an engineer. Like everyone at that event knew that we were all engineers, and nobody was like, are you the recruiter? Like that's the sort of question that I would get asked in Silicon Valley, just because, and nobody means offense. Statistically, I'm not likely to be the engineer. I'm likely to be the recruiter, but for me, it bothers me. So, and I didn't get to your question yet. But yes, so moving around, I feel like that to there the background mental effort that comes with like having to prove yourself and being afraid of different, I don't know, when you start a new job. Oh, it's sad when I think about it, but like when I started my job in Silicon Valley, I was like, I better not wear polka dots anymore because no one will take me seriously. Like I really was, and like I don't know. Who can know? Who can know if that was a good, like a necessary thing to do? Like people will say, "Oh no, you don't need to do that," but sometimes evidence proves otherwise. That it's like if I dress this way, I just seem to be taken more serious. Anyway, whereas now, so when you stay in a place for a long time, you get more comfortable. You trust that people know that, like now with the guys that I worked with, I can ask any sort of stupid question. They know that I'm a great engineer. So I'm safe. I'm safe there. I can wear whatever I want because I'm safe. And sometimes it takes a while. And like, I get self-conscious because people listening who haven't had this experience will be like, this is so stupid. Like, why are people wasting energy thinking that the clothes that they wear matter? And it's like, well, I didn't just come up with these ideas out of a vacuum. Like, it came either from things that happened to me or things that other women, like, we warn each other about these things. So yeah, that's maybe the negative thing of like moving around a lot, but oh my gosh, like I just love moving around. Like I have moved to Portugal recently and I love it here because
But it hasn't stunted personal life in any way, has it?
I change friends a lot, but I keep in touch with the friends from the different places, which is part of why I like to work part-time, is because, that takes a lot of effort.
Are you still working on a part-time basis?
Yes, yes, is joy.
Ooh, very nice.
That's the goal for the rest of my life, to be honest. And obviously, it depends on what lifestyle you need to. That's the thing. That's like there are trade-offs. Like I lived in a 7-person share house when I lived in Sydney, and how old was I? Like I don't remember. I think I was like 28 years old. It's not a common life decision, right? And that's where like there are dimension. There are so many dimensions in life where confidence can just be like reset back to zero. And so, if so, that's like all of this, or just that the dimensions are independent. So to go against the grain of like what lifestyle you should live, um, that has taken effort from me. When I met my partner and I was living in this share house, in order to save money, um, I started questioning like, oh my gosh, like I should get a better place. I should at least get a double bed. Like I should be a proper adult, and it's that you're confident one day doesn't mean that you don't have your confidence shaken the next when there's this threat to your I don't know, your image. So, but I think I've gone off topic now. But I mean,
I
that's
think
just to show that, like,
on the
yeah,
subject of
it's not
traveling,
easy to go against the grain.
um, do you think uh, the mindset of people sort of like changes wherever you go, like how they view life, or
I think so. I remember I had a conversation with a random guy in a park in Switzerland, um, and he told me that starting a startup in Switzerland was very difficult because failed previous startups was seen as a negative, whereas in the US it was seen as like, look at this experience that you have. And so I can't say for sure if that's the case, but I can easily imagine that is because I feel that is there are things at a social level, at a family level, that it's like what you value, especially in this trade-off between like failure versus, I don't know, experience. Um, that is that's just like a cult. A family is also a culture. A company is a culture. Like a team is a culture. All of these, they're all like mini cultures, and so it makes sense that you can have these dimensions at like a country level as well. Of like, what do we value here? Do we value perfectionism, or do we value like people giving it a go? And I, in my life, have weighed too heavily to the like perfectionism side, and it was like that's why getting into rock climbing and being bad at it was so difficult for me. Anyway, and so these sorts of like high level social things of like, oh, here we in Portugal, the building that I live in, it's an apartment block with eight apartments, and it's all one big extended family, and me, and I've like got myself adopted into it, but it's all one extended family in the one apartment building. Like people stay together. That's one of the values that is like different here to other countries. I went to India recently, just very different, like relationship like between different generations of the same family. So I love to, part of why I have moved to Portugal is to see how they do things here and see what's a good idea for me to incorporate into my life. And I've heard that as a society just really values children here. They really love children. If you're at the shops and your child's not, or it's like being difficult to handle, like everyone kind of helps you sort them out. And I didn't even realize that in Australia and the US, you're trained socially to like avert your gaze and just distance yourself as opposed to help. And that, or it's polite. I feel like we decided that that was a polite thing to do, and that's why I like traveling in general, and especially like living in a place, is to see like what are these different norms and which of them make sense to me. Like in France, I remember going to the doctors, and in the waiting room, like this is true in other countries as well, but people go in and they say hello to each other when they enter the waiting room, just like generally to the room. And it's a good idea, I think, like because you're going to sit there for who knows how long. It just makes things less awkward. And I think, like, I don't know, I'm reading an interesting book at the moment that, like, maybe these things, like, okay, what you sit in an awkward silence, but you stress. You're not meant to sit in awkward silences. Like, I think subconsciously your body is getting like stressed being around like strangers that you don't know if you're safe or not. Anyway, that's a very extreme take on doctors' waiting rooms, but
On a more like philosophical level, is there any place that you traveled to and the culture had any aspects that you think is important to impart over here? I appreciate that it's hard to condense, yeah.
I haven't actually. This happens sometimes that like I I'll have the ideas, but they'll be like scattered all around my brain, and I've never made any attempt to like consolidate them into. That's the first time somebody has asked me that, and so it's like, oh, probably, but I can't tell you right now. And that's why.
That can be in part two whenever we do that.
Yeah. And this seems like a strange leap to a different conversation topic, but I'm helping my sister at the moment with an award application, and it reminded me of how useful it can be that award or scholarship applications ask you these sorts of questions of like, in what way have you helped people or something. Like that was one of the ones in the Engineers Australia Young Engineer of the Year one, was like, how have you actually impacted societies? And I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, like you just go through life, you don't actually collate, sort of like grab these pieces from all different parts of your mind, you never bring them together um, without these like external prompts. And so that's part of why reading, I don't know, doing these kinds of reflections, even if you never win an award or a scholarship, I've always found the application process to be rewarding in itself, which sounds like the sort of thing that your parents have said, like, oh, it's everyone wins the soccer game or whatever. Like it's all about having fun, but like, but truly, that's a fun thing to do, and if you, or like a useful thing to do, um, if you can get your family and friends in there helping you, of like, don't forget about these really great things you've done. Like that's and that's what I think. I'm jumping all over the place, but that's where to. So that's I'm just going to wrap up that thing about the scholarships before I move to a different topic. But like that you it's nice to have people pitching in with their how they see you, of your friends saying like, hey, I think that this is actually something that's unique about you. What's unique? I remember my partner actually said like, it's not interesting to me that you got the university medal. It's interesting to me that you like could have done this with your life and you chose to do this because you're a good person or whatever. And it's like, oh, in my head, everyone would do that, but you don't realize that's how you're different. So that.
Sort of on topic of the scholarships, but not really, more about opportunities that come up. How much do you think you would attribute to self-marketing or putting out your personal brand? Or is it more just about your network that helps open doors? Or is it just about building your competence? What advice would you suggest?
Um, the last, I won't generalize. I'll just say like the last two roles that I got was because I knew people. So when I was volunteering in Nicaragua, repairing medical equipment, I met a biomedical engineer that I caught up with on a gap year after I was burnt out from Silicon Valley. Just gave him a call, and I hadn't spoken to him for like 4 years, I think. And he then realized that, maybe I would be a good teammate, and we'd start this skin printing like project together. So, so that was great. Good timing. And then when I was at that company, I made friends with another medical robot device company that in the end is how I moved to the job that I have now, which I was at originally when I first met the CEO of Vexev, which is it's an ultrasound robot that creates a 3D model of people's veins that's used at the moment for I'm new, so I'm like still rusty on but 3D model of veins so that surgeons, there are vascular surgeons, and they're trying to monitor particular progress of a surgery that they do so that then patients can go on dialysis with kind of the gold standard approach as opposed to one that has a higher mortality rate. And so with this model, that gives them the information that they need, and long term will be able for all of us to have diagnostic, like preventative tests of just checks on like how are our veins doing? Are they getting worse year over year? This sort of thing. And in remote areas where ultrasounds are just not feasible because it's a very specialized technician that has to do it usually. So that's
Cannot grasp the magnitude and the importance of the work that you're doing. It's insane,
it's
honestly.
fun. Like, but whereas like day to day, I'm just thrilled by like the technical work that I do. That's why it's so cool that there's no trade off. Like, how can there be no trade off? There should be a trade off, and it's I mean, it is there if you look at it. That's the thing. Is like for someone else doing my role, there would be a trade off. Like, oh, but if I went to Silicon Valley, I could do this, that, the other thing, and that's a trade off for them. For me, it's not a trade off because I'm just like, oh no, that doesn't matter to me. I'm like, I'm happy with this. I get to live in Portugal. Like, I'm loving life. So I met, and I originally met Eamon, just started chatting to him at a startup event when we were touring some other startup in Sydney's like offices. So definitely meeting people is useful. But you never know when it's going to be useful. And so like, and then my job, so that's a combination, but then also like out of the blue confidence, like when I got the role in Silicon Valley, I just said, hello, I have a master's in robotics and computer vision. I have used your software. Could I please help write the software? and I mean, it was a more targeted cover letter than that, but it was like, you don't know me, but I know you. Please, can I come? And if you do that at the right time, that's the thing. Like these cold kind of emails can be very useful in startups that don't have time to put out job ads or whatever. And I said, like, I'd be really happy to just fix bugs in the software. I find that really interesting, which is true. And they were like, oh, we would love someone to come and fix bugs. So if you find a time when, and that was the same thing, like when I was talking to my friend Zach, who I met in Nicaragua, he was like, oh, we need a roboticist. Like, maybe that could work. So
it does depend what stage of the career you're at as well.
Well, in that case, I had a master's and I offered, like, I asked for an internship, and I mean, PhD students also do internships, so it's not like a huge step backwards, but sometimes it's like, I don't know, trade-offs.
Yeah. Oh, Deanna, it's been so nice to talk to you and to learn more about you, and especially about the things that you have been involved.
And the impact of the work that you do.
Yes, it's crazy.
Literally.
Oh, we just scratched the surface, I feel like. I
know.
hope
I know.
going all over the place.
I would love to do another session.
Dizzying for, well, maybe that's it. Maybe some.
I think I'm really it's just like, especially your outlook in life is really inspiring, and I think all the experiences that you have been,
Your energy,
yeah,
it's so
good.
amazing.
And like the way you perceive the career and how comfortable you are with not having it all at the same time. Like, you know, it's like, it's okay.
There's such a security in your mindset and your ideas around this industry that even though it's not, where it should be at this point in time, we have these solutions and this is how we can fix it from this perspective.
Thank you. I doubt it was always like that. Some of these things are like born out of necessity, but it comes from a motivation of like, I like what I'm doing. I want to stay in it. So what are the things that I need to change in my life to actually make this career sustainable? And if I've found something that works for me, like, can this help other people? And if people are welcome to write to me with more specific questions or anything about what's going on in their life, that I would be happy to hear from people, because I'm kind of I'm here for the good of the listeners, as strange as it sounds. Like, I know it sounds a very arrogant thing, but it is nice when people
But it also sounds genuine because the work that you do literally reflects that. Like your effort and your outreach are literally a representation of that. This is what you live and breathe for.
So I do help with it. I hope that it helps someone.
Definitely will. It definitely will. We have like a little fun section of the podcast where we ask different type of questions. So the first question is, what do you do in your spare time, if you have any?
No, I have heaps of spare time. That's my goal. So I actually started a thing called No Tech Tuesdays. I don't work on Tuesdays. And I went to a yoga retreat when I was in India recently, and it was just full of, those vibes that come at the end of a long holiday, and you're like, I have no stress, I have no responsibilities. Like, well, actually, it wasn't that, but it was more like, I was reading books. I don't normally read books in paper. I'm normally listening to audiobooks, and I'm doing it while I'm chopping vegetables or whatever, and I'm like hyper efficient. Whereas when you go camping, you're forced to do these, like, I don't know, special things because you don't have internet.
Yeah.
And I thought, how can I bring that into my ordinary life and not just say that? And it is, admittedly, it's harder when you do have responsibilities back in life. But on Tuesdays, I'll just like take my ukulele to the park. I really like to sing. I like when it makes people smile when they see me with a ukulele. It's a nice instrument for that. And read books. I really like to read books as like That's kind of where I get my mentorship. Oh yeah, that's my ukulele.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I get my mentorship is from books and then from brunch with friends. So that's what I do in my free time, I think.
Nice.
Next one, have you had any favorite experience while traveling?
Oh my gosh, where to start? Oh, where to start? Well, recently when I went to India, I was just blown away at how it felt like a parallel universe in terms of the traffic, because the traffic, like, it could be a 4-lane highway, for example, but the lanes aren't really used. You just sort of go
No.
wherever you fit. And it
It's like
seems
this
like,
weird chaotic system that somehow
yeah,
works.
but it worked and there was no traffic and it was like, it was incredible. And just to see that it was like,
Did it freak you out?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not qualified to drive that style. And that's where it was like, I had to really suppress my urge to be like, this is wrong. It should be like what I'm used to. But it's like, it's not wrong. It's working fine. Like, how amazing that. So that was, for me, like the epitome of seeing like such a different version of normal,
Okay,
and
okay.
just having this concept of like there is one normal questioned again and again. That's why I like traveling,
Wow.
because it's a dangerous assumption.
Yeah.
It is. Agreed.
What chapter of your life do you think you're in, Diana?
I like this question. I like this question. I'll tell you, like, I didn't. Okay, I'll just answer. What I tell my friends, and this is where I'm like, oh, maybe that's boring because that's like, I hope I'm not just saying an answer that I've already thought of, because I haven't actually been asked that question before. But I was saying to a friend on the phone the other day that actually what I'm trying to do at the moment is to really kind of get my fix of technical work before I have children. And so I'm almost trying to, I often will take like, go a year and a half between jobs, not, not working. I'll still write code for my own projects, but just like taking a break. And I have sort of looked ahead a bit and I'm like, okay, well, I can't do that now if, soon I want to have children, because then I would like to take a break during that time as well, away from like, writing code professionally. And so looking ahead, I've then like worked backwards from that of like, okay, now's the time that then I would like to sort of really work really hard professionally, so that then I like am so relieved to take a break when I go on maternity leave, because I'm still coming around to the idea of like, oh, but are you sure it's not going to be boring, like not working? You push on with it. There's plenty of other things that and I get advice from other women. When I go to women in engineering events, like that time that I was looking at one in Sydney, I just asked people like, what did you do on maternity leave? Wasn't it boring? Like
Good question.
these things, and just
Yeah.
trying to, I don't know.
But it's a different chapter of life.
Pre-mat leave chapter of like, what's the name of that chapter? That's the bucket list, pre-kids bucket list chapter.
Do you think you'd take an extended break from work when you're on mat leave, like a couple of years?
I feel like you just have to suss it out.
Play it by the ear. Yeah, that makes
I,
sense.
I all I know at the moment is that I don't know, and that makes me think you can't have the information to know until you're there. Which is, I'm a planner. I'm a big planner. I really don't like this like see how it goes
Uncertainty.
thing. I want to have everything planned out, and so here I can just plan for possible scenarios and then use the feedback that I get just from life on the go, and implement one of the strategies, I guess. But maybe it'll just be an entirely different one that I haven't thought of yet.
Definitely.
Which should be
Oh,
really
man.
inspiring, but honestly, like as a planner,
Everything you do
Yeah,
is so
everything.
inspiring. Thank you so much for your
When she
time.
said like, "Oh, I haven't been working hard," I was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Please explain.
I've met definitely I've had people tell me like, oh gee, I wish I had that problem, but I like my job so much that it's hard for me to stop working. Like I get burned out because I'm like, I want to solve this bug like every day, and then I just end up I working part-time has been really wonderful for me because it has given me the discipline to not let work become the entirety of my life, because if I
Wow.
work 4 days and get paid for three, it's a bad mathematical, like financial decision. And so now I use that as the motivation to not work long hours. Whereas before it was just like, do whatever you want, Deanna, if you're having fun. And no, it's not sustainable, that approach for myself. So now I enforce sustainability with this like part-time strategy. Also, I just have other things that I like doing. Like, you can't get everything that you want. Like, people when they're young, they're like, oh, I like this and that and that. How am I going to choose? It's like, well, the what if you don't have to choose? So I like outreach, but that's not usually part of my job. I like maths, but that's historically not part of my job. So I'll teach engineering maths at university on my day off. I'll do outreach on my days off. These sorts of things are possible because you can, because you work time, then you can be happier as a person. Rest is also a good thing. So yeah, it works for me.
Yeah, true. No, fair enough. Sorry. Um, I think the last question that we have for today is, what is that lesson that life keeps teaching you?
The lesson that life keeps teaching me.
I know. Making her think.
Um, I'll just say what's at like the surface. So we were, so there was like a technical glitch there, and we had a bit of like dead gap while we were waiting for Sohan's computer to reboot. And Laura was like thanking me for my time, and I said that actually it's easy because this is the the most impactful hour that I can have. Like that would always like get me off the couch to go and speak at schools, is like it always feels like the most impactful hour of my day is like working directly with people and inspiring them. And I feel like lesson the way the question's phrased is like, oh, it should be like a hard lesson learned and there's some like tears and whatever in it, but I just feel like the the subtle like flowery lesson that I'm learning from life is that we're kind of, I don't know, I'm in it for like impacting people, and to there's not just one way to do that. um, and I'm learning that it is sometimes more rewarding the more like tangible it can, the more tangible the impact is. Um, I don't know. So that's maybe the lesson that's helped me philosophize this. It's that people have said that to me before, of like, on your deathbed you think about relationships and that sort of thing, and I don't feel like I'm like learning this lesson again and again and again, but I'm reminded of this ongoing lesson that you need to remind yourself of when you're trying to juggle lots of things, of like, relationships are important. It's like people are important, and the way to carve out time to keep in contact with friends and family and to mentor people, that is more rewarding in a it's rewarding in a dimension that writing code um, is not. And I need both of these things in my life, and so balance, while it's a very hard thing, it's that's the important, that's the goal of my life.
I love the paradox of this message, and if I could just reinstate it, is that it's someone who writes code for a living and understands also the importance of human aspect, because more and more we're living in a day and age where we're becoming disconnected.
I know.
So it is such a good message.
As I was saying, I'm like, oh, but people are going to hear, some people say, oh, I didn't do this because I didn't become an engineer because I like working with people or whatever. And it's like, no, I work with people, and I love the engineers that I work with as well, but people like feeling the impact that they have. And so when you work on a medical device, for example, that's years away from FDA trials, the impact is hypothetical. And it can be nice then to have some like concrete impact today. And sometimes that, honestly, I feel like the smaller scale you go, the more likely you are to have that feeling of like concrete impact. Like if you I have time now that I'll sit in parks and like, I helped an old lady unlock her phone one day. Like, the smaller scale you go and the more local to your house, the more like real tangible impact you can have on people. So if you start, I don't know, a little like mentoring club that is 5 people, but it's like 100% tangible impact, like don't underestimate these tiny acts of impact, because they live in a different part of your, I don't know, appreciation, because of how real they are, not hypothetical.
Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias por venir hoy. Thank you so much for being here. It's lovely seeing you. So happy you look, and I hope I get this word right. Irradias felicidad.
Yeah,
radiate. Happiness. So it's so good. Thank you for the incredible work you do for women in STEM careers, for inspiring us, and for also improving people's lives.
And we will actively stay tuned to see what you're up to next.
Yeah. Hey, right back at you. This is like, what a team.
Yes.
Like, we can only inspire each other through like media like yours. So thank you for the work that you do.